Welcome to Less Clutter, More You, a podcast that travels with you through the journey of letting go and creating order so you can start making more room for what matters most. Together, we'll go beyond the basket to start unlocking your next level of embracing your physical and mental space through mindset shifts and action steps. I'm your host, Maggie Britton, professional organizer, clutter coach, wife, and mom of four, and I am so glad you are here. Hello and welcome back, listeners. I am super excited for you to meet and to listen to Emily Weinberg, who is going to chat with us all things ADHD. And if you are here listening and you are trying to work through your clutter, get organized, and stay organized, there is a good chance that you have either been diagnosed with ADHD, suspect ADHD, or there are just some parts of your life and your brain that you could still get some information and some really good tips from Emily on how to work in your space and work with your brain and how you think and make that work for you. So, Emily, welcome. Before we get into what made you go and get diagnosed, because I know that it was a late discovery that you came upon or probably knew all your life, but we'll get into that. But I just want you to share the story that you shared on your stories and Instagram this morning about your bagel, because I want everyone to listen and recognize that you are not alone. And when you're feeling defeated, that we are all in this together. But Emily had a win this morning, and I want her to share that with you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. This is exciting. I feel like clutter might be the story of my life. And I have yet to be on a podcast that really focuses on organization and clutter, but it's definitely within the realm of difficulties for somebody with ADHD and somebody who doesn't have ADHD, but there are ADHD specific reasons why clutter can be so challenging. Clutter and organization, I should say. But yeah, so my little win this morning was I dropped my kids off at school, and every once in a while on my way home, I think like, I'll grab a bagel. Then I don't have to make breakfast for myself, and they're delicious. And generally when I do that, one of two things happen. One, I tell myself I'm going to stop for a bagel, and I drive right past the bagel place, and I pull into my house and I go, oh, I forgot to stop for a bagel. Or I'll park, I'll go in, there'll be a huge line, and I'll watch people as they walk in and grab their little to-go orders and leave. And I'm like, that would have been a wise thing to do. So this morning, I decided I wanted to get a bagel. After I dropped my kids off, I popped into my head. I said, I'm going to order this ahead of time. Got on the app. I ordered my bagel. I drove home the whole time in my head saying, stop at the bagel place, stop at the bagel place, stop at the bagel place. I stopped at the bagel place. I went and I walked right past the line. I grabbed my bagel and I left, and it felt really, really good. And that's just one of those small wins. You know, as somebody with ADHD, I have pretty poor working memory. So poor working memory, which is why oftentimes I drive right by the bagel place, because when I leave school and think I want to get a bagel, by the time I get to the bagel place, that thought's out of my head. And also just poor future planning, like to see the future and remember I should pre-order this before I get there. That thought doesn't cross my mind until I pull up and I go, oh yeah, I probably could have pre-ordered this. As did the thought, oh, I probably could have texted my wife to see if she wanted something. That thought didn't cross my mind until I was picking up my bagel. So I got a partial win. Next time I'll ask her if she wants anything.
And that's the small win that we want to celebrate every single time. And I try to share that with my community too, that it's the small wins that matter. You know, we don't have to make these big transformational changes every single day. It's the small wins that build upon each other and help us actually, I think, too, when you recognize that something does work, you can kind of stack that and do it a little bit better the next time and do it a little bit better the next time. So, Emily, Tell me a little bit about what was it that made you say, I recognize that I have ADHD. Let me go get diagnosed. And how has that changed since you received that diagnosis?
Yeah. So, this is not one of those like I've known since childhood. It could have been so easy to spot. I think, unfortunately, there's just so many misconceptions about ADHD and how it presents. And I wasn't a 7, 8-year-old little boy full of energy, bouncing off the walls, not able to sit in class. Like that really, really is the stereotype of ADHD. And that is true. Some kids fall right into that stereotype. But I was a daydreamer. I was just kind of head in the clouds, messy room, disorganized backpack, forgetting things, losing things. But that was really just seen as like spacey. She's a space cadet. I did fine in school. So, okay, I won't get into the whole childhood, but just to say, this wasn't the obvious signs were there in childhood. Now knowing what I know, those are obvious signs. That is how ADHD can present when you have the inattentive type. And that does tend to be how it presents mostly in girls. Not all girls. Some boys present like that as well, but generally, that is how it can present in girls. So fast forward many years, I'll go straight to adulthood, right? I had people point out through my young adulthood, like some of the more stereotypical ADHD things that I would do. Again, spaciness, losing things, distractibility, right? I was the like, ooh, look, a shining object kind of person. So I had people kind of joke around about that. And in my young adulthood, where I didn't have a ton of responsibilities, I could kind of just get through life. I had this feeling of like, I don't know, maybe I have ADHD, but if I'm just like a distractible person, like, I don't know, who cares? I'm fine. Fast forward into, kind of my late 20s, early 30s, I guess. I was a teacher. I struggled in that job, really struggled. In hindsight, more than I even knew I was struggling at the time. All the executive functions that are required of teachers, planning, organizing, time management, just couldn't do it, but kind of pushed through until I had my kids. And that's when I kind of got on the ADHD path. We had our kids and I left teaching. I was going to stay home with them. And that was kind of like our plan. I had always wanted to stay home with my kids. And I was just struggling, really struggling. I just kind of felt like I was just floating and there was always a million things to do. I never knew what any of them were. It was so hard to get stuff done. It was just, everything was just very spinny all the time. And it wasn't until they were around 2 that, kind of a backstory, somebody had just mentioned ADHD to me and something that I had said. And I just found it kind of odd, like, you don't know me very well and you're picking up on this. So let me see what you're talking about. That led down the rabbit hole of, oh, this is what ADHD looks like. Oh, these are the symptoms. This is how it presents. Well, oh my God, this explains everything. This explains all my struggles. This explains why when my kids would go down for a nap and I had some time, I just froze on the couch in indecision and, maybe told myself I was relaxing because I needed to, but it was really just, I don't know what to do. There's so many things to do and I don't know which one and I don't know how much time I have and I don't know how much time they'll take and it was just that every single day, rinse and repeat. And that's when, after a few months of researching and reading and podcasts, I said, this is it. Like, this just makes so much sense. I talked to my dad about my childhood and asked him questions without explaining exactly what ADHD looks like in girls. And the way he was describing me, I was like, so yeah, that is a stereotypical presentation. So yeah, that's what kind of led me to my diagnosis in a not short story.
Yeah. And I think so many people, when you just said that, when their kids were down for the nap, you had the opportunity, not say that you have to be doing something, right? But you had the opportunity to be doing something and you just got stuck.
Yeah.
And frozen in that state. How do I move forward? Where do I start? How do you prioritize? What's the next best thing? And looking ahead.
Yeah.
And so I know you talk a lot about task initiation. And when people are calling for help to declutter and to organize, oftentimes it's because they can't get started. They don't know what to start with. Should we work over here? Do we start over here? What comes next? How do I make these decisions? Where does it go? There's so many smaller parts that make up the big picture. And with someone with ADHD, as you said, you're stuck at square one. Can you talk a little bit about the task initiation and what that means? What do you do when you're stuck?
Yeah. So task initiation struggle with that is kind of one of the symptoms of ADHD, right? Having a hard time getting started. And sometimes that can be so frustrating for somebody with ADHD because it's like the task itself is not the challenge, right? It might be a relatively quote unquote easy thing to do, but it's the getting started that is so hard. And that's really because task initiation, it's getting started, but it actually requires so much executive functioning that, that's exactly where somebody with ADHD has deficits. So task initiation requires prioritization, right? Which is something people with ADHD struggle with. It's being able to look around and not only seeing what needs to get done, but also what's important. So it's like somebody who's neurotypical might be able to see a bunch of things and very clearly put them in order of what needs to get done. My wife does this. She just knows a bunch of stuff to do and it's amazing. I don't even understand it, right? She can see it in her head and she just goes through it. Whereas for somebody with ADHD, everything feels equally important, equally urgent. It's just a bunch of stuff floating. And we really struggle there. And so that can be like the first very overwhelming piece of this. Another challenge is time management, right? Like understanding and estimating how long certain things are going to take. Do I have enough time for this? What is something that I can finish before my kid wakes up or I have to go here or whatever? We have a really hard time conceptualizing the passing of time. And so oftentimes we may totally overestimate how long something will take. And so then we kind of stay away from it because we're like, well, I'll do that later. I don't have enough time. Or we completely underestimate how long something takes. And then it can kind of like derail our whole day. And so knowing that about ourselves, sometimes it can be really hard to pick a thing to do because it's like, will that take 5 minutes or 2 hours? I don't know. So that's another thing that kind of keeps us stuck. Emotional regulation, which is kind of biggest part of ADHD, I would say, because ADHD is really just, it's not an attention deficit, like blah, blah, blah. It's just not. We have a ton of attention to everything, everywhere. We see all the clutter. We can see all of it. We are not ignoring it. We see it all and we're on overload. And so the emotional regulation piece is really, if you're seeing all the clutter and you are so overwhelmed by all of it, because we have a really hard time recognizing certain emotions, allowing certain emotions, and kind of soothing those emotions, what tends to happen is we kind of just like run from those emotions. We don't know what to do. So I'm overwhelmed and like, I'm out of here. I don't even know what to do. Or I'm looking around and I'm seeing the clutter and I'm feeling a lot of shame for allowing it to get this way. And so again, I'm out of here. I'm finding something else to do. So that emotional regulation piece is also really crucial when it comes to tackling projects and when it comes to getting started. Like this was all, I think, stemming from task initiation, but there are certain emotions that if we don't know kind of how to recognize and manage and regulate them, we can't get started. It's just a roadblock. It's a barrier.
Yeah. And what you said on that you are seeing everything, like you are paying attention to everything.
Oh, yeah.
I can totally recognize how that shows up. And then obviously that's all that visual clutter that becomes overstimulating and again, creates a sense of overwhelm. So if someone is stuck, they want to get through something, what are some next best steps or thoughts that someone can work through to at least just get started on the small stuff?
Yeah. So for me personally, I could sit here and list out first you do this, then you do this, and you do this. But sometimes I think we know that, right? There are some steps that we kind of know. The bigger piece here is really recognizing the emotion at play. And I can actually describe it by looking at my desk right now, because I may be on this podcast talking about clutter and organization, but I have clutter and I'm not very organized. And there is stuff all over my desk. It's kind of a mess. I could sit here and see the mess and kind of think what is wrong with me? Why does my desk look like this? Why can't I put this stuff away? Why is this tape here? I know why it's here, but why is it not back where it came from? Right? I could sit here and just kind of beat myself up about everything on my desk. And in the past, that is 100% what I do. The what is wrong with me, right? That's so much of what I try to get at with people with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm sitting here thinking, what is wrong with me? Why am I so disorganized? Why do I have stuff everywhere? I'm just going to kind of be at this low level of dysregulation, right? Because what is wrong with me brings up a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of regret, just a lot of really negative emotions. And so when we're done with this podcast, if I'm feeling shame and embarrassment, I'm not sitting here organizing the desk. I'm running into the other room, still not feeling great. But now I'm at a place where, do I like the clutter? No, it's not awesome. It is very visually overstimulating. But when we have the visually overstimulated paired with the what's wrong with me, why can't I get my act together? Why does my desk look like this? That makes it so much worse. And so I can sit here and just acknowledge there is stuff all over my desk. And at some point, I might want to put some of it away, but also it doesn't make me a horrible person that I have stuff all over my desk. It doesn't make me this lazy, crappy, can't get my act together person. It's messy. I did a lot of stuff this morning and things were coming out and I was putting them down and I didn't put them away, and it is what it is. And so that can put me more at a place of, okay, now I can actually see that there's a few pens on my desk and I can just stick those pens away, and I can bring the dishes down to the sink and I can actually see it and think clearly about how I want to address it rather than just run away from it. I can't go into any of my own tips and tricks until I can kind of come down a bit and challenge this thought that pops up of what is wrong with me, because nothing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me that there's clutter on my desk. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And I love that. So in the COCO organized process, which is my 4-step process, the first step is clear, and it's not clear your space. It's clear your mind, because nothing is going to happen. You're not going to be productive. It's not going to feel good until you get straight and get into a place and just recognize, okay, here I am. This is not about who I am or who I'm not. It's just about taking that next best step forward.
Yeah.
And as you said, you see the things, you're busy, but you will put that back when it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And taking that pressure off of our self-expectation, I know I talk to my community about the word should. I know that you talk to your community about the word should. So let's dive into that, because I think just as you were painting that picture for your desk, so thank you for doing that, visualizing that, and the first thought that could come to your mind, as you said, is, I should get to this. Yeah. Well, you should have ate the food that was on the plate, right? And you should have used the pen that you needed to make the notes for your business. And the tape, you should have whatever.
Yeah.
It is such a dangerous word. And let's talk about how that shows up, not only in ADHD, but a mom with ADHD, right? That combination is really hard, because our personal expectations, society expectations, right? It's a whole heavy load.
Yeah.
And so how do you help coach your clients without getting into a full coaching session with Emily? What's something that you could just say to one mom out there who is struggling with ADHD, who feels the weight on her shoulders and has these stories that she's telling herself, right? And what is something that you could say to her if she was sitting here with you?
Oh gosh, that's, first of all, I feel you. I see you, without trying not to get on too much of a tangent. I will say, and I speak to this often, I think what can be really hard about ADHD in motherhood is that there is a general narrative about motherhood that it is hard. And that narrative is absolutely true. Motherhood is hard. Parenthood is hard, right? Raising kids is hard. Nobody is debating that. There are so many more challenges when you have ADHD. And the hard thing is they're not challenges that are exclusively true about having ADHD, right? They are also experiences that every mother can struggle with. There's mom brain kind of thrown out there a lot, oh, everybody forgets to pack the lunches. Everybody is late to pick up. Everybody has messy counters. There's this the one thing that you're telling me you struggle with, everybody struggles with it, right? And so I certainly had a very hard time, especially since I'm married to a woman. So she was also in motherhood, and it was hard for her. And it was really difficult for me to kind of say, I think it is harder for me. And I'm not invalidating how hard this is for you, but the things that I am struggling with are not once in a while I'm late to pick up, are not, oh, once in a while I can't get myself to do anything during a nap, are not, oh, once in a while I'm forgetting to throw the laundry in the dryer. It is happening every day. It is happening really often. And it is really affecting the quality of my life, right? It's that analogy between everybody pees, but if you're peeing 60 times a day, there's something there. And so it can be really hard for moms to try to figure out, is this just motherhood or is this something else? And then it can be even harder if you start to think this might be something else and you are met with I'm late to pick up my kids all the time. Everybody does that. Yeah, we all have the running list in our head of things to get done. So what I would say to a mom who is really struggling and is kind of looking around yeah, maybe this is hard for everybody else, but everybody else seems to be doing it and not because there's a point at which you kind of say yeah, this is hard for everybody. So there's something wrong with me that this feels harder for me then, I guess. There's something wrong with me that I can't do this stuff if everyone's saying it's hard for them. So if there's just this thought of I don't think it's this kind of hard for everyone, there could be a bigger reason why, and validate that. And I am not sitting here diagnosing anyone with ADHD, but I am saying just start researching it more, because I know for me and pretty much anybody else I've come into contact with ADHD, if you start to be this explains my entire life, this is me to a T, oh my God, everything makes sense now. My wife does not feel that way about ADHD. I asked her once, I said, have you ever wondered or questioned if you have had ADHD? And she was like, no, right? She can relate to some of this stuff, but it doesn't explain her entire being. So I have no idea if that actually answered your first question there, but that's what I would say to a mom who is just like, if you are asking yourself every day, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get my stuff together? Why can't I do it might not be just you. There could be something else going on, and you are allowed to seek out support for that. Just because it's hard for everybody doesn't mean you don't get to find support for where it's hard for you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what somebody needs to hear. And what a unique perspective. Having the knowledge and understanding your own brain is such a gift.
Yeah.
In my own home, I have children who are neurodiverse, and the more that you can educate yourself and dive into it, not only is it fascinating, it's helpful.
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah.
It is everything.
Yeah. It is so annoying sometimes that I have ADHD, right? Like, I'm not saying it's all bad, but it makes so many things so much harder. And that sucks. It just does a lot of the times. But it's not my fault. And so that right there, I think for me was just the difference between seeing yourself through an ADHD lens because you have started to understand how your brain works more, and not knowing anything about your brain. And so just thinking like, here I am, I screwed up again.
Yeah. With my guests, I love to ask the question, what is something that you have let go of that has made your life better by letting go and making room? And I think you just answered that question, right? You have let go of all those shoulds and that self-loathing thoughts and stories that you were telling yourself. And that alone is opening up so much space mentally, right? It's just so much mental space reclaimed that you'll just continue to work on and improve as you go and gain even more space, right? Each time you do it, it's going to be a little bit less and a little bit less. And you're just going to work up that mental decluttering muscle. And so thank you for answering that question without even knowing that you were going to answer that question.
Yes. It's definitely the what is wrong with me. And I don't mean always, right? Like, I'm human. Sometimes I have bad days where I'm just like, but at my core, do not believe that there's something wrong with me anymore. So when I look at my desk, I don't think that there's something wrong with me, that it's cluttered. I think that I have ADHD and I throw things somewhere when I'm done using them and it builds up.
Although I will say, from my view, from anyone who's listening and is not, watching us at this point, Emily does have some systems in place. There are clear spaces. She is underestimating her ability.
There is a plate back here. I just pushed it a little out of you.
I have a plate.
That was my bagel plate.
I have a bag of pretzels, but in general, there's nothing wrong with you. And the best part is by now you are able to, like you said, the teaching didn't work for you. But now look at what you're able to do. You are able to go out and help other women. Are you coaching just women? Are you coaching men? Anybody?
It's funny. I am coaching men as well. Okay. I thought I would end up like women would gravitate to me, but no, men. I have men and women.
Good to know. Really good to know. But so now you are able to share your brain because of the way that it is with the rest of the world and help the next person improve baby steps and order that bagel or whatever it is that win is going to change for them and make that day. So now that we answered that like deeper level of what did you let go, is there any physical clutter that you have let go recently, or do you and your wife, or is there like reset times that you're like, all right, we're doing a drop off, or what does that look like in your house? Who's initiating that task?
The drop off No one.
Oh, forget it. Forget it.
Well, yeah. See, the thing is, I am lucky because my wife is very good at like putting things away. So my spaces are cluttered, but she is very adept at finding homes for places where I'm just like, I don't know where that Post-it belongs. So it's going to live there for a bit. It is unbelievable to watch her. Like I blink and all of a sudden everything's gone. And I'm like, where is it? So I'm really fortunate to have that, except when she puts, things away that then disappear for me. And, I don't take my vitamins for 2 weeks because they're in a cabinet. Mm-hmm. I would love to get rid of everything. I really hate stuff, but because she is the one who is pretty good at like putting stuff away, mm-hmm. there is this like, if she can find a space for it, then I guess, it can go there. But, every once in a while I do like a big haul. I have kind of gotten away from feeling this heavy need to do that all the time, because feeling the heavy need to do that all the time, it makes me not be able to stand the clutter more, because then not only is there clutter, but I also haven't been doing anything about it. So there's a bit of an acceptance piece of like, there's stuff. And eventually, if it's stuff I want to get rid of, I will. And it does feel good every once in a while to like go through like the playroom and that top shelf where just like broken plastic things live. Every once in a while, I'll do like a sweep and just like throw it all away. And it feels excellent. But I guess I don't really build that in. It's more like when the moment strikes me, I go with it, because then I really can do it. Whereas if I'm like, do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow, I'm probably not going to do it. So I guess it's kind of like, sometimes I feel like I give not so much advice, but like opposite of advice of what somebody wants to hear. Like, help me get rid of these things. And I'm like, maybe just accept that they live there. But that acceptance piece probably will allow you to one day actually get rid of them.
I agree with that, because there are things, like you said, the broken pieces of toys, right? That can go. But if you're not ready and it is something that you are wavering between, then you might not be ready at that point. Then go with the broken piece, go with the trash, right? Go with those obvious things. And if there's nothing obvious at that point, wait and come back to it.
Yeah.
One thing that when people are looking for support when they are ready to declutter is A, getting it started.
Yeah.
B, the time management of it. C, getting to a specific item and then making decisions.
But that is why it's great. Like, your company is perfect example of like where somebody with ADHD can support themselves, right? Like, there is sometimes this just like, here's where a should comes in, right? Like, I should be able to take care of this space. Other people can declutter their own houses and they don't need help. I should be able to do it, right? And no, like, you shouldn't. First of all, like, nobody should have to do everything alone.
Nope.
And second of all, the deficits that we have make this particular task so challenging, and just willing ourselves to be able to do it. Like, can we declutter? Yes. It's not something we're completely incapable of. Can we also get help to do it? Yes. And again, that goes back to like, that doesn't make you any less of a person. That doesn't make you some kind of failure. It makes you actually like pretty smart to recognize like, this is really challenging for my brain. So I'm going to bring somebody in who can function as those parts of my brain to help me through this. Right. And recognizing like, it's not all or nothing. Like, yeah, maybe you were able to declutter in your bathroom because it's a small space. There's very specific, like, this shampoo, empty, chuck it, right? And so then we're like, well, I did in the bathroom. I should be able to do the rest of the house. It's like, no, there's not this like all or nothing, black or white, which is how we very much tend to think. It's, I can do these spaces, but this one, I really need to bring in some help here. And that's just one, like, people with ADHD, everybody needs support, but people with ADHD, we need support, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We can do other things really amazingly well.
Exactly. Like, that's so ingenious. It doesn't, and I mean, even with clients who aren't ADHD or haven't been diagnosed. It's just the matter of efficiency is quite astounding. So it's a good combination. There's so many levels and so many angles of ways that ADHD shows up in your space, mentally, physically, emotionally. And so I am thrilled that you were redirected, Emily, and that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing with your brain. So if anybody is looking for that ADHD coaching, you can find Emily at ADHD with Emily on Instagram. And everything else will also be in the show notes. And you can connect with her if you think that maybe ADHD coaching is for you. So thank you, Emily. And I can't wait to dive into this a little bit deeper with you going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. If after listening, you have gained just a boost of motivation to start thinking about your clutter and taking action to clear it, then I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode and leave a rating and review so we can continue to grow and inspire others just like you. In the meantime, I'll be here cheering you on your next step forward with living with less clutter and more you.